Come on stage, Wim. Hi.
Hi.
Should be this one, correct? Is it?
Let me check.
Is it? Yes.
So.
F5. You know how to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me introduce you W Henderickx. He's Director, Network Consulting Engineering Technology in the IP division of Alcatel-Lucent. Well, should say probably...
Yeah, not yet. We were a little bit...
Wim, wake up! The world has changed.
Yeah.
So
Goes fast.
he provides senior level consulting on advanced IP solutions, such as triple play, network routing, mobile, and the enterprise to service providers through the EMEA. He's also actively engaged in assessing and defining future technologies that will help shape communications networks and services of tomorrow. He has over 15 years experience in the communications and networking industry and is a regular speaker at technical conferences all over the world. He holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering, data communications, as well as a master's degree in economy. And by the way, he's a Bell Labs fellow as well. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Yeah. So this talk is about, one is SD1 is one of the elements which we are talking about, but so it's actually what I try to do is a little bit what we have seen into the market today with all the different customers which we are working on, which is both service providers and enterprise, and give you a little bit of a view of what type of virtual CPE approaches we have seen and what you need to take into account when you select one or the options, or basically try to see which of the different applications or options you would like to implement and in your network, right? So as a start, where I want to start from is basically what we see today is that I think 80 to 90% of today's enterprise VPNs are actually delivered using MPLS VPNs, right? And I think these are some charts which is actually interesting because I took it from a research, and actually Europe is very large versus US, which is a bit of a difference, but anyhow, I think it has to do with the amount of variation and the amount of operators we have in Europe versus US, so it's a little bit more constrained. But anyhow, what is important here is that what we have been doing so far over the last couple of years, we actually have been bundling transport and connectivity with a managed service, and we actually have delivered an SLA towards our enterprise customers, and that's what most of our VPN-based services, how they are delivered, right? And the question is a little bit, if you look what is happening into the market, people are asking ourselves, what do I want to do? We have this whole NFV space coming on, we have this whole cloud space coming on, people are able to initiate services at different places, and people are questioning themselves, okay, how can I evolve it? And based on the customer conversations which we have, it actually, what you see and what this tries to summarize is that today our services are very much delivered in a very dependent way, depending on location, depending on the type of transport which is available to us, and dependent on the type of device equipment which is available to us in order to deliver the service. And if you take that all into account, a lot of it is actually done in a very manual and not very dynamic way, right? And a lot of our customers, what they are looking us to do is basically, what can you do to help me with automation and making this service delivery more agile, and so on and so forth. And as such, people are asking ourselves, what can SDN and NFV do in order to achieve some of this, right? How can I deliver a service which is not only on-net into my own connectivity domain, but how can I offer a service where certain branches are actually connected outside of my territory, and how can I connect them in a secure way and in a way that it's actually very friendly from the operation and installation type of point of view, right? And there is many, many, many other aspects associated with that, which are actually questioning, our enterprise customers are questioning themselves, am I doing the right thing? Are there no new technologies available to us which make this more simpler and more agile going forward? And as such, with everything what we do with SDN and NFV, people are thinking, what would it give to me if actually I can deliver a service which actually can be able to accommodate some changes in a point and click type of fashion? What does it help to me if I can do that at my own pace and be under control of my own destiny? And how can I do it independent of my transport provider? And how can I connect that to basically any cloud, whether it's my own private cloud or whether it's a public cloud or whether it's actually a third-party cloud provider with whom I'm partnering with, right? And as such, people are expecting themselves to do that actually in a little bit of a way that actually is no longer about interconnectivity, but it's actually about the service which our enterprise customers are looking for, right? And then we have to ask ourselves the question, because this conference is all about SDN and NFV. So what does SDN and NFV can do into this space in order to help and alleviate those problems, or how can we help improve the service delivery towards our enterprise customers in such a way that they actually make things better and make it more easy of use, right? Now, first of all, what we have to do is look at what we do today, right? So most of our customers, I deliver it through MPLS VPNs, right? We have a dedicated service either through 4G or LTE type of connectivity. We have it through fiber, or we have it through DSL type of connectivity. And then we have typically separate systems to manage the CPE environment. We have separate systems to manage the wide area network, and we have separate systems to manage the cloud. And if you talk about a public cloud, it is typically another one, right? And what we also see as a feedback is that every time I want to have a change onto that environment, I need to touch a number of systems to be able to accommodate the demand of my enterprise, right? If I want to interconnect, oops. All right.
Go on.
If I want to change the service or try to do something different than what my operator is providing to me, it takes way too long before that change is to accommodate it. And there is too many bespoke solutions depending on the different problems which are coming available to us. And as a result, what you see is that there is a number of constraints which we need to see depending on the environment we're in, how can we actually make them work better, right? As such, we have tried to summarize the different options into 3 categories. So the first one is basically what we call the thin CPE type of solution. What this is actually about is today I have a certain, let's say, enterprise CPE, and basically if you talk to the virtual CPE type of environment, what happens is rather than putting that software which is running today at customer premises, I'm actually going to instantiate that into the cloud or into a certain POP or data center which is available to me, right? And as such, what you see is that this is actually targeted more to the low-end type of environment, but mainly targeting towards the environment where people would like to reuse their installed base, and they try to get the benefit of this agility which cloud, SDN, and NFV is actually bringing us to the table, right? Now, the first question you have to ask yourself, how do I interconnect or how do I get access to that software, right? Because that data center and that POP is not co-located with that CPE, so I need to actually get there, right? And there is basically 2 main approaches to that. The first one is more of an Ethernet, what I call the underlay approach. You have a direct internet with either VLAN or Ethernet or whatever technology is available to that, and you interconnect that into the cloud or the different or the POP which is available to you. And that works very well when you actually try to reuse your installed base and try to reuse your installed VPN or network in order to connect yourself towards such an environment, right? The other approach which you have is that if I'm not under control over my underlay and I want to interconnect it to the cloud, I typically can make use of tunnel techniques, and there is many available to us. There is secure IPsec, there is GRE, there is VXLAN, there is L2TP v3, and I think depending on the type of CPE which you have available to you, you need to be flexible to accommodate different access technologies. But what is important here is that when you do something like that and you don't have control over the network which is under which you are connecting, you need to take into account MTU problems, fragmentation, reassembly, and stuff like that. So it's not always as straightforward to do this, and you need to take into account some of these constraints, and there is many techniques to accommodate that, but not everything of that is implemented in today's CPE which are available to you, right? The second problem which you have to think about, if I run this software into the cloud or into a data center, do I run it in a multi-tenant fashion or do I run it in a single-tenant fashion, right? Do I use containers or do I use virtual machines? Or do I use a single virtual machine which is actually multi-tenanted to multiple customers, which also take into account managing the capacity, managing the orchestration of that. How do I make sure that the resource is available to me? So there is different challenges depending on the environment you are in and how your orchestration system deals with that, right? And as a company, we decided to do both options, and we see both being adopted, but there is different pros and cons of each of those approaches, and depending on your orchestration system, you need to take into account some of these elements as well, right? Now, if you look at this solution, in order to then upsell some of the capabilities, because so far we have connectivity to that software, you can, of course, use service chaining into the data center with the different techniques which we have available from SDN and NFV to us, and as such, you can actually add value-added services on top of that enterprise VPN service, and life seems to be good, right? So why do I need something more? The question or the challenges come from this point of view, because if I put everything into the cloud, the challenges which you have is around resiliency. If there is certain quality of experience which is not in line, what do you do in terms of managing the traffic and distributing the load depending on quality of experience reporting you have from an analytics engine and stuff like that. Given that you don't have anything at the customer premises to help you, it will be very hard to do some of these use cases. Troubleshooting is another key aspect which is challenged in this type of environment, but the big advantage of this approach is actually reusing the installed base, and the cost of the customer CPE is actually very low, right? So if you look into that from a market segmentation, you see that we actually need to augment it to something, but there is certain spaces where this is actually very relevant. And I see the spaces where people are looking into this. First of all, people who are trying to reuse their existing CPE and they try to build their service more agile. Secondly, what you see is that this is very relevant in the, what I would say, the low end of the enterprise market, more the SOHO or SMB type of space, where people don't have all these requirements. I want performance management, I want to have full automation and stuff like that. So where the requirements are actually the barrier to actually give this agility is actually not as high as other people are trying to achieve, right? So that's option number one, right? So it gives you a very good, let's say, flavor to actually do or make the service more agile, but it's not sufficient because we need to, we believe we need to augment the solution at the customer premises to actually help some of these issues or challenges which are represented here. Now, what is the second option which we have available to us is what we call the FAT CPE solution, is that you go to kind of an x86 type of platform and you run, first of all, your own software as a virtual machine or as a container, depending on security issues. And you have the ability to run a third-party software stack onto this, right? And as such, what is nice about this is that actually I can have a very open environment, and actually my CPE or my enterprise customer or my branch becomes more like a mini data center, right? So also if you look at this, very nice capabilities, and a number of people are looking at this. Now the challenge with that is that, first of all, I think what we see is that from experience, in cloud, if you want to interconnect your public cloud, you need something like this, right? So there is no other option, right? So if you go to AWS, you can install an AMI, and actually you have that image running of that virtual CPE into a public cloud. So there is no other option with public cloud. Where the challenge comes from is actually how do I orchestrate all of this in a scalable manner, right? Because it's nice to do a demonstration with 1 or 10 branches, but some of these large enterprises, they want to actually build a service which is actually connecting 1,000 branches or even more, right? And then, if you look today, OpenStack, and probably some people will talk about that later on, OpenStack is not built for this use case right now. And to do that orchestration in a very scalable way, we have still a number of challenges available to us, right? The second thing what we have to take into account is a branch is needs to be very cost effective, right? So the resources of that x86 platform, people want to scale it down because you want to sell this as $1,000 or even a few $100. That's the type of device people are looking for to sell, right? And as such, you need to take into account those constraints that the environment you have available to you is not completely the same as like a data center is. As a result, we see more and more let's say, demand to run this as a container, security aside, because there is some techniques. Docker is a little bit unsecure, but I think if you look to LXD and stuff like that, they have taken into account some of the security constraints. We need to build an environment in which you don't have to add software on top of software on top of software, right? And as such, containers, we believe, is a very interesting technology to take into account when you want to host third-party applications, because it allows you to actually squeeze down the footprint of the environment which you have to run upon, right? Now, again, what we see in this environment is typically hosted or targeted at a very large end customer, because which are today really a managed service offer where the customer or the operator, today typically service providers, are installing CPE, firewall, one acceleration, multiple boxes, and as such we can actually make that more simple and more agile onto a single type of platform. Now, option 3 is actually, you can actually make option 3 also work on option 1 and option 2, but basically what we have done, and this is also our solution which is targeting SD1, which is actually what we did. We said, okay, we can have an x86 platform, either a white box with software, we can actually ship a full software stack to the customer, or we can actually ship a virtual machine, which is actually very relevant in cloud type of environments, right? And what we are, one of the key things what we are missing is this policy control layer, which is able to help us to troubleshoot when there is issues, to actually steer the traffic when there is quality of experience problems, to help in the installation and the bootstrapping, and to actually make the service easy and agile to be able to accommodate different type of environments which we are in, which are independent on the transport and independent of the location and independent of the device which you are running upon. And as such, what we see is that this SD1 solution, which is in Nokia called the Virtual Network Services, which is based on the Nuage portfolio, is actually accommodating that in both the thin CPE type of environment. It is actually working also in the fat CPE type of environment, and it is working actually into a white box type of flavor, which is able to give you that full automation and full agility, right? And as such, what we do and how we approach this, this environment today is, first of all, we try to help our customers and try to be flexible in what type of environment they are in, and try to ensure that we have the right solution for the right of environment. And as such, we are trying to make it flexible, because we see that there is it's not one solution for everything. You see that depending on the environment, low-end type of branches is more thin CPE, medium to large is more type of SD1, and then there is a role to play also for the fat CPE, where there's probably some more work to be done in order to accommodate some of the orchestration plane work. And as such, we are trying to make our solution flexible such that you can actually have a mix and match even for different sites to accommodate the different requirements for the different use cases and requirements for the business needs of our customers, right? If you want to have more detail, we have a booth here where we can demo all of this, and I'm happy to take questions or of that. But I welcome you all to the booth, because we have all of this up and running, so it's not slideware, but it's reality. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Wim. Thank you. Stay here, stay. Particularly, I really appreciate your consultancy approach. You brought some thoughts on the table, and I think that's really really nice for all the audience here. We have time for a question, please. Any question for Wim? Yes. Wait to the mic, please. Can you wait just one little second and introduce your name and company, please?
Yeah, my name is Shabta Adelsberg. I'm from Audio Codes. You have described a solution for entire enterprise data needs.
Yep.
And that involves CPEs. Yep. But usually enterprise needs to answer voice needs. Mm-hmm. And usually that CPE has to combine both data and voice needs.
That's correct.
So the question is, how do you see voice combined with the data solution?
Are you talking about legacy voice or?
No, we're talking about the new unified communication solution, Skype for Business, BroadSoft, of the top players, others.
So basically, I mean, what I talk about is connectivity, but voice is definitely one of the services which is part of that connectivity platform, because it's not only about data, but it's also about voice, right? And as such, what you see is that there is, typically what happens today is that the selection of the branch and the voice is not always combined, right? So that's for example why the FET CPE, which has the ability to run an application onto the CPE or either into the cloud, is easily augmenting what I all described, and you can actually deploy that in both in different options. The thing is that with the thin CPE solution, right, the challenge is if you have a break in your wide area network, how do I call, right? If my software runs into the cloud, right, how do I still make a voice call?
Yeah, you usually use a dual IP.
Correct, so that's one way of solving it, you build in resiliency, but some people say, okay, I need to have like a small PBX type of entity in my customer premises such that at least I can still have some type of communication. So there's different solutions out there. I think all of them are orthogonal to voice or actually accommodate voice type of communication, so nothing is preventing you from doing that. All right?
Thank you. Wim, a quick one. Something is changing in the CPE paradigm here, which in the past the CPE was a device that has some very standard boundaries that could be integrated in a unique IT ecosystem, and so it helped the multi-vendor approach with multiple kind of CPE under the same IT. Here the IT is a piece of the solution. So how do you see the multi-vendor approach for operator, which is still important for business reasons? So how do you see that?
First of all, I think what we have done is we have built it with open APIs, right? So one of the challenges with the SD1 type of approach, right, is if you want to reuse my installed base, how do I do that, right? So that's why the work which we are doing, both in IETF and in many other organizations, is to build our, let's say, whole system open with open APIs, right? And as such, that you have the ability to program those devices into a multi-vendor fashion. So the policy plane which I described is actually taking that into account to be able to include third-party elements into the solution. And as a result, you will be able to orchestrate different CPEs from different vendors. Now, what you see today is that we are focused more on the service side than on the multi-vendor side, but we have already demonstrated this in a multi-vendor fashion, where you take a CPE from vendor A, you put the software in the cloud and augment it with a policy plane, let's say, on different levels.
Okay. Thank you, Wim, for this first level of a response. Thank you.